Before we start, make sure you subscribe to Storyova, the place where real stories come to life, where betrayal, ambition, and unexpected twists collide. If you love powerful storytelling that keeps you hooked till the end, you're in the right place. I never thought my biggest competition would come from my own family, especially not my sister. Growing up, we were close. Or at least, that's what I believed. We shared a room, secrets, late-night talks about dreams and what we'd become one day. She wanted stability. I wanted something bigger, something of my own. I was always the one experimenting, trying things, failing, trying again. While others were settling into safe careers, I was building something from scratch. And then, one day, I had an idea. Not just any idea. The idea, it came from a problem I kept facing over and over again. A gap in the market that nobody seemed to notice. I spent weeks researching it, months planning it, sketching it out in notebooks, building rough prototypes, and imagining how it could grow into something real. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fully formed. But it was mine. I remember the night I told her. We were sitting on the floor of our apartment, eating takeout, talking about life like we used to. I was excited. I trusted her, so I shared everything. The concept, the strategy, the audience, even the name I had in mind. She listened quietly, nodding, asking questions here and there. At the time, I thought she was just being supportive, interested. I had no idea she was studying it, memorizing it, taking it. A few weeks passed. I was still working on refining my idea, saving money to launch, trying to get everything right. Then one morning, I woke up to a message from a friend. "Hey, is this your company?" There was a link. I clicked it, and my stomach dropped. It was my idea. Not something similar. Not inspired by. It was exactly what I had described. Same concept. Same structure. Same audience. Even the name. But it wasn't mine. It was hers. My sister had launched the business before I even got the chance. At first I thought it was some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe she partnered with someone. Maybe she forgot to tell me. Maybe there was a logical explanation, so I called her. She didn't pick up. I texted her. No reply. I kept refreshing that website, scrolling through it again and again, hoping I'd find something that proved I was wrong. But everything I saw confirmed it. She had taken my idea and built it as her own. By the time she finally responded, it was already too late. Her business was live. She was promoting it everywhere. Social media ads were running. People were signing up. She replied with a single message. I didn't steal it. I just acted on it. That sentence stayed with me. I just acted on it. As if the months I spent thinking, planning, building meant nothing, as if execution erased ownership, as if betrayal could be justified by speed. I felt angry, betrayed, stupid, but more than anything, I felt lost. What do you do when someone takes the one thing you believed was yours? For a few days, I did nothing. I sat with it. The anger, the disappointment, the constant replay of that night in my head when I told her everything. I blamed myself. I should have kept it to myself. I should have moved faster. I should have known better. But eventually, something shifted. Because no matter how much I thought about it, one truth remained. The idea might have been taken, but the ability to build something, that was still mine. So instead of trying to fight her, instead of wasting energy on revenge or legal battles I couldn't afford, I decided to do something unexpected. I decided to study her. If she was going to run my idea, then I was going to learn from it. I signed up as a customer. Yes, I became my sister's client. At first it felt strange, almost humiliating, but I told myself this wasn't about pride anymore. It was about understanding. From the moment I entered her system, I started paying attention to everything. The onboarding process, the user experience, the communication style, the pricing structure, every small detail. And here's what I discovered. She had launched fast, but she hadn't built it well. There were gaps everywhere that the user experience was confusing. The product felt rushed. Customer support was slow. The value wasn't fully delivered. She had the idea, but she didn't have the depth. And that's when I realized something important. An idea is only the beginning. Execution is everything, and good execution, that's rare. So while she was busy scaling something flawed, I went back to work. Quietly, carefully, strategically. I started building a better version, not a copy. An evolution. I fixed every problem I experienced as her client. I improved every weakness I noticed. I refined the concept, made it clearer, stronger, more valuable. And this time, I didn't rush. I tested everything. I talked to real users. I made mistakes, corrected them, and improved. All in silence. Months passed. Her business grew quickly at first. But then something started happening. Complaints. Negative reviews. Customers leaving. Because when something is built on speed without substance, it doesn't last. Meanwhile, I was preparing, not just to launch, but to dominate. When the time finally came, I didn't make a big announcement. I didn't try to compete directly. I simply entered the market with something better. At first, nobody noticed, and that was fine, because the people who did notice, they stayed, they experienced the difference, and slowly, word started to spread, not through ads, but through results, through real value, through trust. One by one, customers started switching. Some of them came directly from her platform. They didn't know the story. They didn't know the connection. They just knew one thing. Mine worked better. And here's the twist I never expected. One day, I received a notification. A new client had signed up. I looked at the name and I froze. It was her, my sister. She had signed up for my service. At first, I thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. Single quotes. She was using my platform the same way I once used hers, except now the roles were reversed. I didn't confront her. I didn't message her. I just let it happen. Because at that moment, everything came full circle. The person who took my idea had become my customer, not because of revenge. Not because I forced it, but because I built something better. That was the moment I truly understood something powerful. No one can steal your ability. They can take your idea. They can copy your concept. They can even beat you to market. But they cannot replicate your perspective. Your depth. Your commitment to doing it right. That's what creates real success. Over time, her business faded. Not overnight, but gradually, because it lacked foundation, and mine, it kept growing. Stronger. More stable, more trusted. As for our relationship, it was never the same. There was no big confrontation, no dramatic apology, just distance. And maybe that's okay, because some lessons don't come with closure, they come with clarity. If you're listening to this and you feel like someone took something from you, your idea, your opportunity, your moment, remember this. You are not defined by what was taken from you. You are defined by what you build next, because in the end, it's not about who started first, it's about who builds better, and who keeps going. So, don't stop, don't shrink, and don't let betrayal turn into defeat. Turn it into fuel, because sometimes the biggest setback becomes the foundation of your greatest success. And sometimes the person who once stood in your way ends up standing in line for what you created. That's the real win. And that's your story. I wish I could tell you that everything felt like a victory in that moment. That seeing her name as my client gave me instant satisfaction. But the truth is, it didn't feel like I expected. There was no rush of revenge, no dramatic sense of I won, just a quiet realization, and a strange kind of calm. Because by then, I had already moved on from trying to prove anything to her. I wasn't building to beat her anymore. I was building because I had something real, something solid, something that people actually needed. And that changed everything, you see, in the beginning. My motivation was emotional. It was driven by betrayal, by the need to reclaim what I felt was stolen from me. But somewhere, along the way, that motivation evolved. It became about the work, about the process, about the people I was helping, and that shift. That's what made the difference. Because when your focus is on proving someone wrong, you burn out. But when your focus is on building something right, you grow. Slowly, consistently, powerfully. I started noticing changes not just in my business, but in myself. I became more patient, more strategic, less reactive. I stopped chasing quick wins and started building long-term value. And that's when things really began to scale. Not in a flashy, overnight success kind of way, but in a steady, undeniable way. Revenue increased, customer loyalty strengthened, opportunities started coming in, collaborations. Partnerships, invitations I never thought I'd receive. And the best part? It all came from something that was once taken from me. Think about that for a second. The very situation that could have destroyed my confidence ended up sharpening my skills. The betrayal that could have made me quit pushed me to become better, stronger, smarter. But here's something most people don't talk about. Success doesn't erase the memory of what happened, it just changes how you carry it. There were still moments, random ones, where I'd remember that night. Sitting on the floor, sharing everything so openly, trusting completely, and I'd feel that slight sting again. Not as sharp as before, but still there. And I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't always about the other person. Sometimes it's about freeing yourself from the weight of what they did. So I made a decision not to forget, but to let go. Not for her, but for me. Because holding on to that anger was only slowing me down. I had already lost enough time. Meanwhile, my business continued to grow, and with growth came new challenges, bigger decisions, higher risks, more responsibility. But this time, I was ready, because I had already been through something that tested me in a deeper way. Losing an idea hurts, but rebuilding yourself after that, that's where real strength comes from. One day, I got an email. It was from a client. A long message. They wrote about how my product had helped them solve a problem they'd been struggling with for years, how it made their work easier, their life better. They ended the message with a simple line: "Thank you for building this the right way." And that hit me harder than any revenue milestone ever could, because that was the difference. That was the line between what I built and what she rushed. It wasn't just about having an idea. It was about caring enough to do it properly too. Think about the people using it to refine it until it actually made a difference. And that's something no one can steal. Not your sister. Not a competitor. Not anyone, because it comes from within you. Your standards, your mindset. Your approach. And those things, they can't be copied overnight. They can't be rushed. They have to be developed, earned, lived. As time went on, I noticed something else. People started asking me about my journey, how I built my business, what strategies I used, what mistakes I made. And for a long time, I avoided telling the full story. I'd talk about the growth, the lessons, the systems, but I'd skip over the part about my sister, because it felt complicated. Personal. But eventually, I realized that was the most important part, because that's where the real lesson was, not in the success, but in the setback. So I started sharing it, not with bitterness, not with blame. But with honesty. And every time I told it, I saw something interesting. People didn't just relate to the business side, they related to the betrayal, to the feeling of being overlooked, undermined, taken advantage of, because it's not just about business. This kind of thing happens Everywhere, in friendships, in workplaces, in families. Someone takes credit. Someone moves faster. Someone uses what you shared in confidence. And it makes you question everything. Your judgment, your trust, your worth. But if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's this. What you do after that moment matters more than the moment itself. You can shut down, pull back, stop sharing, stop building, or you can adapt, grow, and come back stronger, not louder, not more aggressive, but better's the key, better, because better wins in the long run, every time. It may take longer. It may not be as visible at first, but it lasts. And lasting success. That's the real goal. Not quick attention, not temporary wins, but something that stands, something that grows even when you're not forcing it, something that people trust, and trust. That's built slowly, through consistency, through quality, through integrity. 3 things that can't be faked for long. Looking back now, I see the situation differently, not as something that was taken from me, but as something that revealed who I needed to become. If she hadn't done what she did, maybe I would have launched too early, maybe I would have cut corners, maybe I would have built something average. But because of what happened, I was forced to go deeper, to think harder, to build better, and that changed everything. So no, I don't thank her, but I do acknowledge the role she played, because sometimes the people who hurt you end up shaping you in ways you never expected. And that's a hard truth, but it's a powerful one. As for her being my client, that continued for a while, quietly. No conversations about it, no acknowledgement, just transactions. And that in itself was a statement, because at the end of the day, value speaks louder than history. And when someone chooses your product, despite everything, that says something, not about them, but about what you built. Eventually, she stopped using it. I don't know why. Maybe she moved on. Maybe she couldn't handle the irony. Maybe it just wasn't something she wanted to continue. And honestly, it didn't matter. Because by then, I had already moved far beyond that chapter. New clients, new goals, new direction. My world had expanded, and her presence in it had become irrelevant, not in a harsh way, just in a natural, distant way. Like a story you once lived, but no longer belonged to. And maybe that's the final lesson. Not every story needs a dramatic ending. Not every conflict needs resolution. Sometimes, growth is the resolution, moving forward is the closure, and becoming something greater is the answer. So if you're out there, holding on to something similar, someone who took from you, someone who hurt you, someone who made you feel like you lost your chance, let me tell you this, your chance isn't gone, it just changed form. It became harder, more complex, more challenging, but also more meaningful, because now, when you build, you won't just build fast, you'll build strong, you'll build smart, you'll build with awareness, and that kind of building, that creates something unstoppable. So, keep going, even when it feels unfair, even when it feels like you're behind, even when it feels like someone else already took your place. Because your place isn't something anyone else can occupy, it's something only you can create. And when you finally do, when everything starts to align, when the work pays off, when people start choosing what you built, not because of hype, but because of quality, you'll understand, it was never about the idea, it was about you, and it always was. That's what makes this story powerful, not the betrayal, not the twist, but the transformation. From someone who lost something, to someone who built something better. And that's where your story can go to. If you choose not to stop, if you choose to rise, if you choose to build anyway. Because sometimes, the person who seems ahead in the beginning is only setting the stage for your comeback. And when that comeback happens, it doesn't need to be loud, it doesn't need to be announced, it just needs to be real. And real always wins in the end. There's one part of this story I haven't talked about yet, and honestly, it's the part that took me the longest to understand. It wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the business. It was trust, because after everything that happened, I didn't just lose an idea. I lost a certain version of myself, the version that shared freely, the version that believed that the people closest to you would always protect you. For a while, I became guarded, quiet. I stopped talking about what I was working on, even with people who had nothing to do with what happened. Every idea stayed locked in my head, every plan stayed hidden, and at first, it felt like the right move. Safe, controlled, untouchable, untouchable. But over time, I started noticing something. That version of me wasn't growing, because ideas don't evolve in isolation. They need feedback, they need perspective, they need challenge, and by shutting everything in, I was protecting myself. But I was also limiting myself, so I had to learn something new. Not blind trust, but smart trust. There's a difference. Blind trust is telling everything to everyone. Smart trust is knowing who deserves access, who has proven themselves, who respects boundaries, and who doesn't. That lesson changed how I moved forward, not just in business, but in life. I became more observant. I paid attention to how people reacted to my wins, my struggles, my ideas, because people reveal themselves in small moments, in subtle ways, and once you start noticing, you can't unsee it. Some people support you loudly, but compete with you quietly. Some people ask questions, not because they care, but because they're collecting information, and some people truly want to see you win. Those are the ones you keep close. Those are the ones you build with. Those are the ones you trust. Learning that didn't make me cold. It made me aware, and awareness, that's power. Because now, when I share something, it's intentional, it's strategic, it's protected, but it's not closed off. And that balance, that's what allowed me to keep growing. There's also something else I realized, something that might be hard to hear. Not everyone who hurts you is trying to destroy you. Sometimes, they're just trying to elevate themselves, and they don't care who they step on. In the process, that doesn't excuse what they did, but it explains it. And understanding that helps you move on faster, because instead of asking, why would they do this to me? You start asking, what does this show me about them? And that shift changes everything, because now, you're not stuck in confusion. You're operating with clarity, and clarity leads to better decisions. Better boundaries. Better outcomes. If I'm being completely honest, there was a time I wanted her to fail. Not just lose customers, but completely collapse. I wanted her to feel what I felt. That frustration, that helplessness, that sense of something being taken from you. But here's the truth. Holding on to that kind of thinking, it drains you. It keeps you tied to something you should be moving away from, and more importantly, it distracts you from your own path. Because every second you spend watching someone else fall is a second you're not building your own rise. So I let that go too. Not instantly, but gradually. Because I realized something simple. Her outcome doesn't define mine. Her success doesn't limit mine. And her actions don't control my direction. Once that became clear, everything felt lighter. I stopped comparing. Stopped checking what she was doing, stopped measuring my progress against hers. And that's when I truly started moving forward, not reacting, but creating. Not chasing, but building. And that shift, that's where real growth happens. There's another moment I remember clearly. It was late at night. I was working, like usual, refining something in my system, making a small improvement most people would never notice, and I caught myself smiling. Not because of money, not because of success, but because I genuinely enjoyed the process. And that's when it hit me. I had fallen in love with building again. The outcome, not the recognition, but the act itself. And that's powerful. Because when you love the process, no one can take that from you. No one can rush you. No one can rush you. No one can outpace you in a meaningful way. Because you're not just chasing results, you're committed to the craft. And people who are committed to the craft, they always go further. Maybe not faster, but deeper, and deeper creates stronger foundations, stronger businesses, stronger identities, stronger lives. So if you take anything from this part of the story, let it be this. Don't let one betrayal turn you into someone you're not. Don't let it close you off completely. Don't let it make you bitter. Let it make you wiser. Let it refine how you move. How you trust, how you build. Because pain, when processed properly, becomes perspective. And perspective, that's one of the most valuable tools you can have. Today, when I look at everything that happened, I don't see it as a loss anymore. I see it as a turning point. A moment that forced me to grow in ways I wouldn't have chosen, but absolutely needed. And maybe you're in that moment right now. Maybe someone just took something from you, an idea. An opportunity. Credit. Trust. And it feels unfair. It feels frustrating. It feels like you've been set back. But what if this isn't the end of your path? What if this is the moment that sharpens you? That pushes you to a higher level. That forces you to build something stronger than you ever would have before. Because that's what happened to me, and it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen easily, but it happened. And it can happen for you, too, if you choose to respond differently, if you choose to keep building, if you choose not to let that moment define your limits. Because in the end, your story isn't about what someone did to you, it's about what you did after. And that part is still being written, so make it count. This is Storyova. Where even the hardest moments turn into the strongest chapters. And sometimes, the thing that breaks your trust ends up building your strength. Keep going.